I'm Mary Jones, the Executive Director of the Stuart Heritage Museum. Last month we re-elected our board, and unfortunately we lost a board member during that month. Lee Johns passed away. As of yesterday, his niece, Suzanne Johns Campbell, is taking his place at the museum as a volunteer and as the treasurer. Lee's funeral was last Thursday. Unfortunately, the newsletter went to bed on Monday and he died on Tuesday, so it didn't get in last month's newsletter. And I apologize for that. A lot of you may not know that. Well, I have so many of them tonight. This is not on my list, but I'd like for them to stand up. All the board members. These girls and guys are incredible. Mac, I think, is the only guy here. Mac? Okay, will you girls stand up? Linda, Tonette. Where is she? Okay, we can't see you if you stay seated.
You could see when she stood up.
Did I miss somebody? I know I did. I don't have my list. But anyway, they are a fantastic board, and they work very, very hard, and we thank you. Tonight, I would like to introduce a special family to Martin County. The Whitcars have been here a long time, and I am so glad that they decided to do this program tonight. As you can see, their paintings are here. And their books are for sale out there. If you want one, when this is over, I'll be at the desk out there, $10 a piece, which is a deal. They're usually $18.95. Okay. Joanne, Laura Kay, I know you're here somewhere. Where'd you go? Oh, and John. And they're going to give the program to us tonight, so let's welcome them. We're going to start with Laura Kay.
My brother John has a wonderful slideshow that shows everything from, a long time ago up until now. So I'm just going to mention a little bit about the paintings. As you know, Dad did a lot of paintings. He was on his 1915th one. And a few of them that he did before that are not numbered, like the hobo over there is not even numbered, so we're not sure how many he did. Some we like better than others, I'll have to admit, but he did some wonderful, wonderful paintings. And there are some here tonight, just kind of a little bit of this. And then there are also, if you're interested in other paintings for sale, Molly's house has a wonderful display, 3 floors of his paintings. If you haven't been there, you should go look. I will warn you, some of them are not for sale, and they will be a lot of the ones that you'll say, oh, I wish that was mine. But those are family ones, the boat ones, and some things like that. But they have great paintings for sale at Molly's house. Then also the House of Refuge Museum. I don't know if you've been there. That's a little gem over on the ocean. And there's a room there that has 10 or 12 of his paintings. They are historical paintings. And they belong to the museum, but they are wonderful. And it tells kind of story of Martin County over there. The Elliott has 3 or 4 paintings on display. And then, I'm sure all of you have been to the Heritage Museum, but there are a number of his historical paintings there. Again, not for sale, but they're all around the wall. Also, they have a display downstairs of a lot of Whiticar paraphernalia, fighting chair, and some other things. So, if you haven't been through that, you really need to check that out also. So, anybody have any questions about the paintings before I turn it over to John? Okay, John.
Thank you, Mark. Can you hear me without the mic, or is it better with the mic? Mic, okay. I was asked a while ago to put together some pictures from our family, and I had the pictures sort of loosely in a folder from something I did a while ago, and I'm going to update them. And then yesterday I found out that I had to do a PowerPoint program, which I've never used before. So I've struggled with that a little bit, and got a lot of time in doing this, so things aren't perfect. I haven't had a chance to really double check dates and names and things, and some things are out of order, but it'll give you some pictures of some of the good old days up to some of the newer times. But I call it Florida Traditions and the 4 Generations of Whitcars, starting with my grandfather, who, Captain Ad Whiticar, I consider him first generation. And he came to Stuart in 1917. And Dad was 6 years old. So this was a little over 100 years ago, this man came to Stuart. And that's where we're starting. And back to the title, the traditions, is that it's interesting when we look through the slides that there are things that he did, not so much my grandfather, because he was really just a fisherman, and my grandfather, but if you look at things my dad did and things that we all like as a family, and things that we still do today that have carried on through the 4 different generations, and that's one of the things we're going to talk about a little bit about. So that's my dad, Kurt Whiticar, our fathers and mothers, or no, our father's parents, and that's Kate on the right and Catman on the left. And one of the things, we go back into here, and if you notice, down here you see the dog. Now I actually have a picture where I photoshopped out the dog because the dog's face is the wrong way, but I left the dog in this one because just to show you the picture of them with the dog, and later on there's another picture of him and he's got a little Scotty. So we've always had dogs in our family up to now. And my wife and I, Dottie, who's in the audience, we just recently purchased our first dog, and there's a little bit of a story about that that we'll talk to later on, but we've always been a dog family. This is a picture of Kurt and Elsa, Mom and Dad, in 1938. Just a lot of these pictures don't really associate with other pictures. They're just kind of fun pictures, and they're just nice pictures, so I threw them in there. This is one of my all-time favorite pictures. This is my grandfather here. Oops. My grandfather, that's Captain Ad. That's Dad, Kurt Whiticar, Johnson, and Jack. And Johnson and Jack. And Johnson was the youngest, but he actually died first. He had some bad habits, and it kind of got him. And then the second was Jack, and Dad lived the longest. But I always just thought this was the best picture that we had of all 4 of them. You got to aim this at it. Oops. What happened? There we go. There's the names. A little closer. Okay. I don't have a date on this picture, but this is the 3 of them again. This is Jack. I believe that's Johnson, and that's Dad. Does that look right? And something in common, again, that you'll see throughout the show are these things they call them Jewfish or groupers, but now they call them Goliath groupers to be, I guess, more politically correct. And I've got those show up throughout the generations as well. It's kind of neat. It's just a picture of our family back in 1957. Oops. There's Larkay, Joanne, myself. Dad. This is another really great picture. This is one of Dad's first big boats that he built. He built a lot of smaller boats when he was as early as 12, but this is actually on the river, Willoughby Creek, and I think this is the lot where the house is. His house is now, before the house was built, and he built this kind of shack up here, and built the boat under the shack, and built this sort of makeshift railway to launch it. And this is back in 1927, so that's kind of that's a neat picture, and that's what the boat turned out like. And I always thought it was, it doesn't look like at all like the newer boats or whatever, but I always thought it was a very classic looking boat. I like the tumble home in the back and just everything about this boat. I wish I could bring that one back someday. Oops, I'll back up a little bit. Okay, this is the Gannet 2 that Dad built for his father in 1958. And that boat's still around today. It's sort of mothballed. We're in a situation where the expense of putting it back together is so much, and we're in a real dilemma now as to what to do about it, but it's still around. This was the original Whiticar fleet back in 1940. And this was later on. I don't have a real date on this. Was probably in the early 50s maybe. But the Northwester and the Gulfstream were Dad's boats. And the hobo right here is Uncle Jack's. Gannet here was my grandfather's. Skipper was Uncle Johnson. And I can't remember the
Howdy was Grandpa's.
it was Grandpa's boat, yeah. This Gulfstream here is kind of a neat story on this. I don't have any pictures. Dad has a really nice painting of this rescue of these people in this boat out in the inlet. And, oh, this wasn't the Gulfstream, that was the Northwester. Okay, forget that. That'll come later. This is just some fishing pictures. You don't see people catching fish like that anymore. Again, there's Grandpa with a little, some kind of a terrier or something. That's my dad. And it's the catch of the day. There's a sailfish, and these look like mostly kingfish, so it's a good catch. Another nice picture of Mom and Dad, 1957. I don't know what the event was. But, oh, also, look back up here. If you look at the drapes, those were the drapes in the living room. They were great. We had this for the longest time. I think they even came back a period for a little bit. The arcade, maybe that's something you should think about. Arcade, now living in Dad's house. So. Okay, this is the families and a big part of the family is the Dragseth family. This is John Dragseth, and this is Dode Dragseth. We call her Aunt Dode, who's over here tonight. Aunt Dode. Okay, and then of course my dad, Kurt, and Elsa, my mom and dad, and this is Bob and Marge there, and Marge was a Dragseth. And then Osa was a Dragseth, and she married Dave Svensson, which is a Norwegian name. Did I do that right?
Yeah.
Ooh, good, I was worried about this picture, so that's good. Back in 1947, 46, this is after the war. There's a big story about this building that we don't have time to go into tonight, but my dad and some other people went down. Well, first of all, he bid on the Camp Murphy down in Jonathan Dixon State Park was a Army base, I think, and it was on private property, and part of the deal was they had to remove the base when the war was over. So the war was over, and people were giving bids on buildings. So my dad went down and put a bid on this big building, this huge building, for like $700 or $800. Got the bid, and he had 30 days to bring it back up. So he and some guys and a couple of trucks went down, took the whole thing apart, brought it back up, and put it back together here. And that was the main building at Whiticar Boat Works for quite a few years. And that's also when he started building boats and built a whole bunch of boats in that facility. Oops, back up a little bit. We added on, this building here became the new boat shop, and this was the offices. This, I can't remember what day that was added, but I just like this picture because of the Exoras and the periwinkles, and these are those little blue flowers that used to be able to grow. And this picture is pretty neat because just look at those Exoras. I mean, have you ever seen anything like that? And that's right next to our office. This guy's name here was O.B., and between the boatyard and my grandfather's property and my dad's property, he was a full-time employee. And all he did was take care of all the grounds. And he had the knack for citrus. He knew when to fertilize them and when to pesticide them. And we had the best citrus that, we all just took it for granted. We thought everybody had wonderful citrus, but this was the guy responsible for it. And I just like the lawnmower too. I think it's kind of cool. Another picture of the gannet. This is the hobo 2, I think, and I like this picture because I first came upon it and it looked really weird, and then later on I found out it was a model, and you can see the boatyard in the background. And there's a guy holding up the model, but I know nothing about where it went or whatever it went, and that's the hobo in 1954. And of course, the bright red color was Jack's trademark color. When Laura Kay and Joanne and I were growing up, the Sunrise Inn, which is kind of at the end of Indian Street, was a place that we spent a lot of time. They had a pool, you could get a membership, you could play tennis there, and so and as boys, we would just come in and out of there like it was part of our, like we owned the place almost. But it also hosted the Stuart Sailfish Club tournament. This is pictures of 1958. And it was a real sort of a culture center for the community. And unfortunately, it didn't survive. It would have been nice if somebody could have saved that and kept it as an inn, but it didn't happen. Back to one of the other themes that happens is children and water and pools and things like this. So this is at the Sunrise Inn pool, and that's me doing a flip. There at the Sunrise Inn pool. Also, the Chanticleer would come over for the fishing tournaments. And Francis Langford knew Uncle Jack's wife, Alice, and also some other people in the community, and they would come over, and Alice would run the microphone for the tournament, and they would just become part of the tournament and had the boat kept there, and it was another little kind of neat part of history. Along with the tournament, and a lot of you have probably already seen this, but my dad and some other people, they developed this sailfish pen. And what they would do is people could get the pen if you would catch a sailfish and release it. So he was one of the early people in our community to start thinking about conservation and saving things for the future, and it became a really big thing. You can find these on eBay every now and then. I think I've got 6 or 7 of them now. I just sort of collect them, but it's pretty neat. This is a postcard. I originally thought this was Inlet Tides, but Laura Kay, my sister, said that could be the Coutons property.
No, it's Inlet Tides.
It's Inlet Tides? Yeah. Well, anyway, it's on this little lake there by the boatyard called North Lake. It was set up as a postcard. And this is Robert Johnson and Mary Johnson. This is their daughter, Carolyn. And I think that's me down there, I'm not sure. And then see, there's the dog again. Back to the water and the pools. This is our son Eddie over here, and just his friends in the pool. This is another just kind of goofy picture that I've always liked. And this is our other son David and his friends on the bicycles. Again, it doesn't really relate to that much, but the Whiticar fleet evolved into basically what was there when I was growing up, and it was these 4 boats. It has the Gannet, the Hobo, probably one of those is the Northwester. I don't know where the skipper is, but that's the Whiticar fleet in 1969. And again, some more of the fishing catches. This is John Dragset, Dodie's husband. We have very few pictures of him smiling. This one he's not smiling. He should have been smiling with all this fish. I don't know why he wasn't smiling, but anyway. Another big catch, I think this is me down here, and is this Larkay, is that you?
Yeah.
And I don't know who these other people are, but these are all kingfish. This is, I think, an amberjack, a couple of amberjack up here. But this is the good old days for fishing. I told you that the Goliath grouper would come back up again. This is a picture of me when I was 5, standing next to the one that was caught. I have no idea where it was caught or whatever. They used to, back when the Jensen Beach Bridge first went up in Jensen Beach, after a few years when everything kind of acclimated, it was a big spot for fishing, and I think they caught a lot of big fish off that bridge that could come from there, or they might have caught it on the reef. Here's another grouper caught. That's Jim, and that's me, 1959. This is 1967, and this is just me. This is John Snavely, who lived at Inlet Tides down the street, and he and I got these groupers out scuba diving. And this was in high school. I don't remember exactly when, but it was kind of before I developed an empathy for wildlife and for marine life. And we did a lot of things that later on, when you go into college and you become a little bit more sensitive to things. And I've always, I haven't actually been showing this picture to anybody over the years because then I was a little bit embarrassed about it, that we went out and did this sort of thing. But the bright side now is the glass groupers has had to come back because it was put on the endangered species list. And they're almost to the point of taking it off the list because it's becoming a nuisance. And you can go out almost any day to the bull shark barge and see people catch and release these fish. So there's lots of bad down. I feel a lot better. Oops. This is again a generational thing. This is the guy in the middle is our son David and his friends, and we went out fishing one day and caught kingfish. We didn't catch 30 of them. We caught 5. And they're a little smaller, but we had a good time. Back in the old days, and I'll show you a picture of why they did this. Now, I think they didn't realize at first how bad the hurricanes could be, but this I look to be about, what, 8 years old maybe or something, you think? So that'd be 58. Well, in 49, which would be 9 years before this, we had a Category 5 hurricane come through Stuart. And ever since that hurricane, I've got some pictures of it, totally destroyed the boat yard. They started bringing the boats up this creek for all the hurricanes. And of course, a lot of times you never got the hurricane, so it was a lot of, just like today, it's you're putting up your shutters for nothing, but you had to do it. But I thought this was kind of, and this creek is now filled in with the mangroves, and they've grown in where I don't think you could even do that anymore. Anyway, this is Whiticar Boat Works in around 1948. That's the Camp Murphy building that I told you about that he brought up from Jonathan Dixon Park. This is a 3-stall boathouse that was there at the time. This property, I don't know if you had the house in 48, do you know?
Yes.
Yeah, so this house would be over here.
39.
Oh, okay. And this is where the railway eventually would go through here. I don't suppose it looks like it's in there yet. But in 1949, we had a hurricane, and it came through, the eye came through somewhere north of Palm Beach, so we got that northern border of the storm, and it was considered to be a Category 5 or 4 storm, and it was bad. So anyhow, that's the 3-story boathouse right there. This is a boat that's just washed up and toppled over. This is some more damage. You can see the truck here, just boats of garbage. A lot of this is the boathouse, and I thought this was interesting because you have the cats sitting out here just taking it easy in the middle of all this garbage. Okay, this is the Northwester, the Nor'wester, and going back to what I was talking about before is that when Dad was charter boat fishing, they had a party that went out the inlet. Nobody else wanted to go out, but this party went out the inlet, and they got swamped, and the boat flipped over.
It wasn't a Whiticar
It
boat.
wasn't a Whiticar boat, no.
They wouldn't go out there.
So they would go out, they would go out. They saw him going out, they tried to warn him, they went out. And it's a really good story, too bad, Dad, we probably have it on several
It's in the
recordings,
book.
and it's in the book, so I won't get into it, but they ended up rescuing all the people. I think that one person died, and my dad ended up with the boat, and the boat was the Nor'Wester. He called the Nor'Wester, and it became one of the charter fleets. So this boat sank in the inlet, whatever day that happened. In the 1949 storm, it sunk it again. And so poor boat's been sunk twice. I told my sisters tonight that I might get super political. They said, "What are you going to talk about?" I said, "I'm not going to talk about any people." But this is a picture I came across them redredging the canal approximately 1949. And I'm just going to read this. The St. Lucie Canal, C-44, was originally completed in 1924 and is part of the Okeechobee Waterway. The canal was deepened in 49 to 8 feet, increasing water flow from 5,000 to 9,000 cubic feet per minute. Now, like my sisters were born and raised in this community, and we've been through bouts of the discharges from the canal, and we've heard stories, and we've lived what's been happening. And this is my personal opinion. It's not anything to do with the company that I belong to or even family members, but a lot of people talk about septic tanks, and it's my opinion, as well as a lot of other people that live around here on the water, that the septic tanks are maybe a small part of the problem, but they're really not the big problem. And so I just hope when we go forward, depending on who's running for office or who's being influenced by what department, we don't over-focus on that. The more recent things have been the blue-green algae and the red tide, and they've taken a lot of attention too, but again, those are more recent problems, and in the past we didn't have those, and we still had issues. So the big issue is the runoff from the lake. It's the nutrients from the fertilizers from agriculture and from the farmlands and things like that. And now we have all these kind of new chemicals that are out there, the Roundups, the bug sprays, and all this kind of stuff, and you just don't know what's in the water. And I think that everybody needs to focus on all those things going forward and realize it's not just the green algae, it's not just the red tide. It's a very complicated situation. And on top of that is sludge that comes out of there. They used to call it ooze that's accumulated in the rivers, and that settles in on everything. I live up in the Indian River, and it's covering the bottom of the Indian River. It's covering the reefs out on the ocean, and it's really gotten bad. Another thing too is that I find really disturbing that we've had really bad releases over the years, but something happened between 2012 and 2016. So that's 6 years ago. This is an area in front of, I live in Jensen Beach, kind of right in this area, and I'm very familiar with this area. I've been in these grass beds, I've fed them, I fish them, and you can see here's 2016, they're gone. Okay, and why, after 75 years or whatever of discharges, did this happen in the last 4 years? And does somebody know why, and they're not telling us? Are they keeping records of what's in this water or what's going on? I don't know, but pretty sad. This is the same period. This is pre-2012. Oops. I should make this pointer button bigger. Anyhow, this is the Sailfish Flats out by Sailfish Point, Sills Point, pre-2012. Now, this is the area we go as a family. I still go there today to take the dogs out. I'm very familiar with the area, and in 2012, it did look like this. 2017, 2018, it's gone. All those grass beds. And they're the nursery for marine life in the Indian River, once said to be the most biodiverse ecosystem in the world. and something really bad is happening, and they're not telling us what it is, and it's pretty scary, I think. So that's the end of my political talk. And you know, when people, all they talk about is blue-green algae and red tide, and they don't, you know, this could be something completely different. This could be, they had a train car derail on a canal full of Roundup, and they dumped it in the canal, and they covered it up, and it all washed out and rounded up the whole river. You know, I don't know. You don't know what happened. So, back to tradition. And I'll try to speed things up again because it's starting to drag here. This is the Nor'wester, one of Dad's boats, and we would go out on the weekends on certain days and go to the sandbar and diving off the boat. So we had a great childhood. Oops. This guy right here is my son David and his buddies. So again, traditionally, we're still doing the same thing. We've got different kinds. We got outboards now, but we're doing the same things. This is one of my favorite pictures too, because this is out at Seminole Shores and what is now Sailfish Point, and you can see the sandbar and the dredge that they were using to dredge and fill sailfish sunk, and they had to bring in these two bigger cranes to pull it off the bottom and fix it. And so we're out here swimming around having fun while they're spending all this money back here trying to fix this crane, which is kind of neat. Again, this is the modern day version of going out to the sandbar. We take more people on smaller boats. Again, you can see the dog. This dog here is Kona, and there's Dottie, and a bunch of other people. We're friends. This is our two boys on the sandbar. This is a pretty funny picture. I hope you guys like this, but this is myself. This is my friend Tom. These are his two kids. And this is Eddie, and that's David, our kids. And we're in this little canal, and we're now become official members of the Hat Club. And to be in the Hat Club, what you do, you take your bathing suit off and put it on your head. So they all thought that was a lot of fun. We didn't stand up, though. We were Oops. This is a classic because it shows myself, Jim, Jim Draxa, and Joanne again, in one of her fancy bathing suits. And look at those glasses. Isn't that great? Later on with me and David, or Eddie, I mean, and this is Eddie and a friend. We're out on the boat again. This is one of those sort of out of sequence pictures that I just found to throw into, that we used to go out to Bathtub Beach and walk around on the rocks. And nowadays you can't do that because they worry about the worm reef and everything. But we didn't know anything about it, and we're looking for little fish to put in the buckets and so forth. Again, another day at the beach. Again, you see the dog. This is Jim, that's me, Larkay, Joanne, Alice, I guess. Sue, probably, yeah. This is 1955, approximately. Somebody just went out and swimming and got a lobster, which I thought was pretty cool. And again, there's their dog, it's Jim and I. And I just looked how kind of cool Mom looked back then. I didn't remember Mom had that sort of sexy look like that. You, Dana? You remember Mom having that sort of sexy look back then?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Another family picture with the dog. We had boxers for a while. Well, mostly were boxers. This is a neat picture. It shows the baby boxers and the parrot. This parrot's name was Itty Wallbad. This is me, and a lobster, and another one of our dogs. And I didn't have a mustache. That was from a mask that had gotten old. It's sort of wearing off on my face. Got lots of dog pictures. This is our son Eddie and Buster, who was one of the best dogs we ever had. Oops, put it back up here. Anyhow, this dog, I called the blind parrot. His name was Itty Wombat, and he would talk and he'd say hello when people came to the door. It was a pretty neat parrot, and we found out later on that he was blind, and so we didn't worry too much about him flying away. I remember one day Dad took him out and put him on a tree, and he chewed off the wrong side of the branch. Okay, this is we've had an interesting 13 years, last 13 years. This was right after the hurricanes. I went by the Humane Society and we found this cute little dog, this precious little dog that we named Kona. And as Kona started to grow up, we didn't realize it at the time, but you see this black and red tongue? So Kona had chow in her. And as she matured, she became a little ornery, but by that time we'd already bonded to her. So we had this kind of a love-hate relationship. She was a great boating dog for me, and fishing, loved to fish, frisbee, everything, but I couldn't take him near other dogs, couldn't worried about other children being around, and we'd have people over, we'd have to put her in the bedroom and things like that. So it's kind of different. So anyhow, this is a picture of me. This is Kona probably a month or two before she passed away. So you see how she's got a little bit of gray, but a really good dog, but very, very weird. We called her schizo, and I won't go into that. But, so anyway, so we decided that we were probably good for one more dog. And so I started, when Kona started getting older, I said, okay, I got to find the dog that is going to like children, going to like other dogs, it's going to like people, it's going to be a good water dog. You know, I've had people get dogs and the dogs wouldn't go in the water. And so I did a lot of research, and that's a long story too that I'm going to cut off. And I finally decided that to get a Labradoodle. And the big deal with the Labradoodles is that they're kind of big, but I found a place in Minnesota where they bred a lab with a small poodle, and you get a smaller version of a Labradoodle. So I went up to Minnesota and we purchased our first dog. We've been adopting our whole lives, and so this is Phoebe, our current dog, who is absolutely great. I mean, it's so nice to be able to not have her attack anybody or have her like other dogs, and it's just really wonderful. So. Again, a continuation of the dogs through 4 generations. This is out of sequence, but oops. This dog's name. Mom and Dad went away on vacation, and I think they felt guilty because they left me home, so they brought this dog back. There's the Beagle, and the Beagle was sort of sick, and it took us a while to get it unsick. I had to step her or something. But I built her this little cardboard doghouse, and she ended up sleeping on top of the doghouse. So it ended up getting the name Snoopy. And Snoopy liked the water. Also liked to go howling out through the community, and the phone would ring, and Dad would have to go chase it down, and he was very perturbed about that. So Snoopy overall wasn't the best dog, and was the only Beagle we ever had. She decided one day to swim out in the river and try to catch up with an alligator. And the alligator got her, but when the alligator got her, she howled so bad. We think this is serious, that she put out such a god-awful howl that it scared the crap out of the alligator. And the alligator swam away. So we had this damaged dog that was still alive that we got back, and we had to wire up her mouth and give her liquid food for a month or two. And very aggravating. And then a week or two later, she just disappeared. I don't know if she decided to go try another alligator or not. This is just my first boat, and again, boxer. This is Sue and Tim, our cousins. Again, I just like the picture. That was another one of my boats there that I had. This is a good story. This house was Mom and Dad's house. It's the house where Laura Kay lives now. And we had this huge we call it a rubber tree in this And Laura Kay and Duran used to play blindsman bluff in the tree. And one of you did fall, didn't you?
Joanne fell out.
Oh, Joanne fell out. So anyhow, the tree started to grow roots underneath the house and get into the septic tank, and they finally had to cut it down. But it was huge. There you can see the trunk. And my Grammy Gregson, who's my mother's brother, planted all these trees around here. And another thing good about this, that's my very first car. And that was a Plymouth Barracuda that came from Uncle Jack.
That's right.
What's that?
Cottage?
Oh yeah, this is Sharon's cottage over there. And that's the cottage that John and Deb Dragset lived in when they first moved down Florida too, was that cottage right
It
there.
came from Camp Murphy.
And it also came from Camp Murphy. So, okay, I'm just about done here. I promise. Okay, this is the house as it is today. Another sort of historical part of the house is this is my dad's house. This is the boatyard. But right over here is a house that, who used to live there?
Joseph Combs.
Combs and then,
Oh, not Combs.
Yes.
Getz.
yes.
Getz, G-E-T-Z.
And after that, the people in the motel business.
Shop.
What, pardon?
Shop.
The shops.
The shops used to be
Okay,
there.
but this used to be the house at the end of Sewell's Point, that Sewell's house that was also a post office. And
It's over to New Riverside.
it started out at the end of Sewell's Point and was moved to that location next to where Dad's house is. And when we were growing up, the house was there. During the Prohibition, they used that for rum running. And they were bringing in cars into the back and loading rum out of garages and things like that. So it's pretty neat to have that building next door to where we grew up. Later on, it was put on somebody else bought the property and it was put on a barge and moved to New Riverside Park, where it is today. That's kind of neat. Again, out of order, this was one of our first station wagons. I thought it was really neat. We might have taken that all the way to South Dakota one year, because I remember we did this really long trip in a station wagon to South Dakota. Really hot. One of the other things, family traditions, is Mom and Dad used to take us over to Sanibel, and at that time they didn't have a bridge; they just had a ferry. So, okay. And it was one of our favorite times growing up, was going over there. This is a picture taken there. Another thing that happened when I was growing up in '62 was they said the Ash Wednesday storm of March 1962 formed a new inlet in Tex Lake. And you can see how it washed away all these trees down here and washed through and made an inlet. And I looked up the storm, and most of what you find on the storm is that it was, and you think, well, March, what's that all about? But the storm was a northeaster off of New England, and it was a Category 5 northeaster storm in March. So it was this huge, sort of never before type of storm, and I guess it generated big enough waves for a long enough time to where it broke through down here. I'm sure somebody else probably has more information on that, but these are just some pictures of down there in Tex Lake. It's a pretty neat place. This is Joanne and myself, the construction of the Evercreek Bridge in 1955. I do a few little things on bridges. This is the dedication of the new high-rise Evercreek Bridge, Jensen Beach Bridge. The Roosevelt Bridge, the new Roosevelt Bridge. I don't know if you remember the big controversy over building the new Lions Bridge because some people wanted it to be a drawbridge. And I sent this picture to the Stuart News and they published it, and it got a bunch of people excited and made enough things happen to where they turned it back around into a high-rise bridge. So it was one of my contributions to the community. They didn't make it like it was, but it does have a pretty neat curve to it. This was a trip to New Jersey, 2005, when Mom was still around. We found some old gravestones with Whiticar on them. Oops. That's the three of us having a good time, back again out on the river. Put a little bit about Dad's painting. He used to try to paint all the boats that were built, and they were a big, which is one of the things that people liked. This was his next to last painting that I actually have. He gave it to me. And he's 106 in this picture. And it's number 1914, or you said?
It's 1912 or 13.
12 or 13, yeah. And these are just some of the pictures that he's done over the years. If I do this again, I'll go down these, so there's so many pictures. These are some times that I did when I was sailing for a few years after college. I worked for Mr. Walgreen, did Walgreen drugstores for a while, and this was his boat. This is kind of a cool picture. That's myself. That's Randy Swearingen, and that's a guy named Todd Romick. A lot of you know Randy, myself. That was just another time. That's when we passed the Statue of Liberty. This is our family early on. We adopted both those two boys. That's again Buster. This is one of my favorite pictures. We call it Whitcars and the Wheat. We did a Christmas postcard. There's Buster again. We were involved with Indian Riverside Park. We'll zip through these real quick. And then I started to work with Dad at the boatyard doing boats. This is one of the newer boats called it's now called the Never Enough. It's called the Buckle Lock. This was some of the high-end work we got into with some of the boats, newer boats. This is the second to the largest boat we ever built, and that's the largest boat. And this is Dad's 106-year-old birthday party that we had at Joanne's house. And so that would be February 13, 2017. So about a week later, we drive down to Fort Lauderdale, and he gets an award for the IFGA Legendary Captains and Crew, which was pretty amazing. And he traveled down there with us, and we had the award show. Later on, we had a dinner. I'll go through the people here real quick. That's Jim Drax. He's my partner in the boatyard. His wife Diva, Tara, Scott. Tara's Larkay's daughter. Dad, Larkay, Jill and Joanne, myself and Dottie. These are the last pictures. These are just some that make me feel good about why we live in Martin County. Fun. Oh, oops. Go back one page of lunch. Oh, okay. There we go. I guess this takes a little while. Come on. That dock there is one that Dottie and I now own on the Indian River that kind of goes into some property that we own. So we go out there at the end of that dock probably once a week. And then Bay Tree Lodge, which is one of my favorite places, and that's the end looking out over the Indian River. Thank you. Like I said, I think next time I'll whittle down some of the slides. I didn't have a whole lot of time to prepare for this. But that was what it was like growing up around here for us and growing up around here for my parents and our kids. And we all love the water, and we love dogs, and it's been a great life until things have started to get really polluted and being told not to go out in the water because it could kill your dog, which really bothered me. But it's nice again now. And it only takes a couple of weeks once they turn off the canals. That's another thing that people don't realize. If it was other things, it wouldn't happen that quick, but it's looking good. All right, well, thank you very much.